Code book class. Here's an introduction to the code book for all you apprentices out there who love reading this thing in your spare time. So I'm using the 2017 edition, even though as we speak, the 2020 edition is starting to come out. But I imagine that the actual table of contents hasn't changed that much. And I'm only going to show you the big stuff. We're not going to necessarily look at every single detail in this thing. But I was told years ago by my boss, if you want to pass your journeyman test, to memorize the code book table of contents. So, there's not that many chapters. Chapter 1 is just general stuff. So what you want to pay close attention to is requirements for electrical installation. That's actually quite an important chapter. And also definitions. Get your head around the terms that the code book uses. We like to say things like hot and neutral and ground. The code book likes to say things like ungrounded conductor, grounded conductor, and grounding conductor. So you need to get your head around things like that. Chapter 2 is wiring and protection. This is vital. These are your branch circuits. These are your branch circuit feeder service load calculations. Outside circuits, services, that's very important, and overcurrent protection, and also grounding and bonding. These are things that will come into play on a daily basis and a regular basis. So keep an eye on that. Wiring methods and materials. A lot of this is just telling you about different types of wire. I mean, there's your armor cable, and there's your MC, non-metallic sheath cable, stuff like that. Most of it is that, although a really important article is in 310 where you get your conductor sizes. There's a very, very important table in 310 that tells you amperage to wire size. So that's something you need to get your head around as well. Spend a lot of time there. A bunch of stuff in here about raceways and things like that. Wiring, general wiring methods. Next chapter is equipment for general use. And so here's your flexible cords and cables, your fixture wires, switches, receptacles, control panels, lamps and luminaires. All that stuff is in here. Appliances, just sort of day-to-day stuff. Things that you come across on a regular basis. Motor circuits and controls. Doing motor calculations is something that you'll do a lot, hopefully, if you have a good instructor in a good school. Generators and transformers. We've been putting in, every now and then we put in whole house generators and things like that. So that's equipment for general use. Then you got your special occupancies. So here's your hazardous things. Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, hazardous locations, healthcare facilities, X-ray installations, theaters, and audience areas of motion picture and television studios. I'm sure all of you do regular service calls in places like that. So those are special occupancies. Places you go every now and then, not a lot. It's very, I've never wired up a hospital, but I have done clinics here and there. Just recently we did an acupuncture clinic. So got to keep aware of things like this. Special equipment. So electric signs, I've worked on a number of those, neon signs and things like that every now and then. Elevators. I think in the number of years that I've been doing this, not me personally, but one of our guys did pretty much a complete elevator upgrade. So that doesn't happen too often unless you do a lot of commercial work. But then there's also elevator install companies that do things like that too. Electric vehicles. Now here's something that every now and then pops up. In the last 4 years maybe, we've done maybe 4 or 5 or so Tesla chargers. So that's something to be aware of. I got it highlighted actually here in my book. So this is all, what did I say this was? This is special equipment. So stuff that is kind of rare, but obviously quite common. Here's something you want to pay close attention to: swimming pools. That's something that you do actually run across somewhat commonly. Swimming pools. Not every house has a pool, but a lot of houses do, and you'll come across the pump issues and lighting issues within swimming pools. Just here, maybe 2 months ago, I had to wrap an entire pool in number 4 copper, bare copper, and bolt the whole thing together and run it to the ground rod. And so it was a brand new pool install, and plus I wired up all the equipment. So there you go. Photoelectric, large scale photovoltaic. So that's becoming more and more common as well. And then chapter 7 is special conditions. So you got your emergency conditions, legally required standby conditions, optional standby conditions, interconnected systems, especially if you're doing hospitals or maybe data areas where they want some kind of backup system, something like that. So that we're kind of getting less and less in. And then of course the whole chapter on communication systems, and then tables. You'll be bouncing back and forth when you do your journeyman test to some of these tables back here. This is where you'll get your conduit fill and a lot of different tables on wire sizes and things like that. So that's the last chapter. So there's only 9 chapters, but like my boss said, memorize the table of contents. And I found when I did my journeyman test that most of the time, almost every time I was looking for something, I went to the table of contents. I see a lot of guys going to the index in the back. That it really isn't actually as helpful. And so just to review, you got chapter 1 is general, that has your introduction, definitions, and requirements for electrical installations. Chapter 2 is wiring and protection. Chapter 3 is wiring methods and materials. Chapter 4 is your equipment for general use. Chapter 5 is your special occupancies. Chapter 6 is special equipment. Don't you love the use of the word special? It's all so special. And then chapter 7 is special conditions. And chapter 8 is communication systems. And chapter 9 is your title. So, like I said, get very familiar with the table of contents. Go through it, highlight stuff that you know that you'll be looking at a lot, and have fun passing your test.